Welcome to Busy Bee Woodworking. Today I'm going to show you my installation of my SawStop router table. And I'm going to start right away with the most intimidating thing. I don't have a SawStop saw, so none of these bolt holes lined up to my table saw. So what I did is I made this jig. That way I knew when I was drilling I was going to have it in the proper placement and everything was going to come in alignment. Because it is crucial that this piece does come flush to the extension. Now as for the drill bits, what I used was my cobalt drill set rather than my titanium. It goes through the metal, it's a little denser, so it's a little bit easier for you. Now we're going to move on to attaching the legs to the base, but before we do that we need to add on the switch box and then also the bracket to the two legs before attaching them to the base. And these bolts are going to take a 17mm socket and wrench. Next we're going to mount the handle mounting bracket to the left leg, which does not have the power switch on it. And all you're going to do is kind of line it up with the square hole there, and then you're going to use the short pan head Phillips screw with a couple of washers on it. Next you're going to install the longer pan head Phillips screw, and this one is used to just kind of hang your wrenches that have come with your router. Now that we have our legs assembled, what we're going to do is we're going to line them up. There should be two holes on each side that they line up with. And then you're going to need a 5mm hex wrench to tighten these screws down to attach the legs to the base. Notice the plug as well as the box are both mounted towards the inside of the leg and not the outside. Now comes the moment of truth. Hopefully you drilled those holes straight. So what I'm doing here is I'm preparing the bolts before I bring the table over, but we're finally going to attach that extension onto our table saw. For this you'll need a 13mm wrench and socket. Now this is definitely the point where a second set of hands would be really nice right about now. Somebody that could help kind of hold it in place and make sure it's staying nice and flush instead of having to come back and forth and adjust it, but we make do. Do you ever wonder what kind of expression you have on your face when you're just blindly looking into space while trying to feel around to make sure you're lining everything up right? Yep, you look kind of like that. If a woodchuck could chuck wood, what wood would he chuck? Maple? Walnut? I don't know. Deep Thoughts by a Woodworker. Alright, now that that's done with all the aligning and everything like that, it's all come out, so I laid a level on it, made sure it was right in line, and tightened down. Now one thing is this bolt right here. When you're using and tightening down with the wrench, use the open side, not this closed side, because it gets really tight up in there and it was kind of difficult to get off. So just a little quick tip. Now we can move on to the assembly of the fence that comes with your router table. And right here we're just we're attaching the Phillips head screws and these square nuts to the 2.5-inch dust port. And we're going to run that down the rail and then lock it into place behind the opening where the router bit goes. Next up, we're going to insert the T-bolts in the front side of the fence with these threaded locking knobs on the back. Now that those are attached, you can take the router fence faceplates and on each side run them down those T-bolts, get them into place, and then I just locked them down here. Next, we're going to move on to the router fence guard, and this also has a T-bolt system to slide in and out, but it also has nuts that will allow you to adjust the height of it, so that's what we're putting on here. Now here we have a couple of rods that are used to actually offset one side of the fence, and this would be if you're using your router to like joint a piece of wood or anything, but I did notice there's a nice little notch in the back that I was able to slide it in and use it as a storage part while I'm not using them. Now for the final piece, we're going to attach the locking bolts that actually will lock this fence down to the table. And you can see that this fence, how it just drops right into place. You can adjust the distance or anything like that, and then also it's real quick, easy to pop it off when you go to use your table saw. And if you're wondering why I went with the SawStop extension, not the Grizzly one, that would have lined up really nicely with my table, here's the reason why. I was able to get this Woodpecker router plate from my uncle, who has upgraded his to a lift system. And because of that, it didn't fit into the Grizzly table. The dimensions of the plate only fit into, it seemed like, this SawStop one. So that's kind of why we got in this whole little predicament. But right here, all I'm doing is I'm putting in all the leveling screws into the bottom of it, and then I'm able to insert the plate and raise it and make it nice and flush to the tabletop. Once you get it nice and level, the nuts underneath will take a 10mm wrench to tighten them down to make sure that these don't slip or move. Now all that's left to do is attach your router of choosing to the plate and drop it on in, and you're good to go. This is going to be nice. Thanks for buzzing by. Don't forget to like and subscribe.